Hey, well, good morning and welcome to another daily devotional. Today we are in 1 Samuel chapter 5. Just in chapter 4, we had learned about how the Philistines had captured the Ark of the Covenant. And now we begin to learn in chapter 5 of what they kind of start to do with the Ark. And it's actually a pretty funny story, but really awesome. So basically what it says is that after the Philistines captured the Ark of the Covenant, they took it from the battleground to Ebenezer to the town of Ashdod. So they take it from the battleground, they now take it to one of their cities, and they have this Ark of the Covenant, and they have a really smart idea, which is, why don't we put it right next to the God that we worship? So they had, in this time, a god called Dagon that was their god that they worshipped, and it was an idol that they praised and thought was awesome. So what they do is they take the Ark of the Covenant and they put it in right next to the statue of their god, Dagon. And so they're there, and all of a sudden, it says this, so they took Dagon and put him in his place. Got ahead of myself. In verse 2, it says this, they carried the Ark of God into the temple of Dagon and placed it beside an idol of Dagon. But when the citizens of Ashdod went to see it the next morning, Dagon had fallen with his face to the ground in front of the Ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and put him in his place again. So basically what happened is they put the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of the Lord, right next to Dagon, a statue of him, which was actually a statue of what he looked like, had his hands, his face, whole nine yards. And so he's there. And when they go in the next morning, they're like, whoa, how crazy is this? Dagon has actually fallen over and is on his face before the Ark of the Lord. So what they do is they take him and they say, okay, well, that's kind of weird. Let's put him back up. And then the next day they go back in again. But this time when they see it, it says this. But the next morning, the same thing happened. Dagon had fallen face down before the Ark of the Lord again. This time his head and hands had broken off and were lying in the doorway. Only the trunk of his body was left intact. That is why to this day neither the priests of Dagon nor anyone who enters the temple of God in Ashdod will step on its threshold. Then it goes on to say how much so that God began to be against the people in the city of Ashdod. And so it's really just a crazy story to know how that there is no mixing of things between the world and God. There is no mixing of things between other gods and God together. There is only one God, and that God is the Lord and Savior that we serve, Jesus Christ, God, the Lord of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. That's the God that we serve. And in our context, sometimes it's a little bit hard for us to imagine that kind of world. But in other cultures, they live where they serve thousands of gods. They serve, I think of people like in the Hindu religion, they have a God for everything. There's a word called polytheistic, poly meaning multiple, meaning in their theology, there's a God for everything. Like in Greek mythology, there's a God for this, there's a God for that, there's a God for this. And then when you preach to them about Jesus, many times what happens is God just becomes another one of their gods. He just becomes a piece of this, myriad of gods. They say, okay, Jesus sounds like a cool God. We'll put him right next to the God of fertility. We'll put him right next to the wind god. We'll put him right next to, and all of a sudden they think, okay, God can just be another one of our many gods that we worship. And for us, we can do that. We can say, okay, God, you can be a part of my life. You can be part of it. Okay, there's my career and then there's God. And you guys are kind of all, there's my family, my career, God. They're kind of all on the same level. But God's saying, no, that's not the way things work. Is there's only one God. And when we serve God, there can only be one God, and he has to be number one over everything. Because in the same way that every one of the false gods had to bow before the Lord, there's going to come a day where you and we're going to have to bow before the Lord. Out of saying, God, we love you and we worship you and we bow down to him. Or we could have lived our life in complete defiance and we are forced to bow down to God on our way to eternal punishment. And so what really this is a reminder of is that God needs to be God of our lives, and God needs to be number one all of the time. There is no mixing of religions. There is no mixing of false theology and God all in the same thing. There is no mixing. There is one God, and that is the God of the Bible, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the same God that Jesus is one with, the same God as part of the Trinity, that God is God, and there is no other mixing together. And then we live in a culture where they say, okay, Islam's okay and Christianity's okay. Oh, this religion's okay and this religion's okay. And if you live your life that way, you will soon come to the same fate that Ashdod did, that every false religion will weigh empty in light of the true God. And so let's today choose, hey, you know what, God, you are the one and only God for me. I'm going to worship you and love you because you are the one that loves me. You created me, you care for me. And today you are going to be the number one God over my life. So today I pray that that encourages you, that today you would just have God be in charge of your life. Let him take the wheel today. We love you so much, and we hope to see you tomorrow for 1 Samuel chapter 6.